What's up, Facebook family, social media family? 7.5 billion people on the planet. I hope that your day is amazingly well. I hope that you've been productive, getting out and exercising, eating right, reading, meditating, focus on what you need to focus on to make your dreams and goals a reality, even in this difficult time. I'm here today to continue talking about Keith Black, the surgeon at Cedars-Sinai Medical Hospital. He's a brain surgeon, and the title of the book is titled Brain Surgeon. And in this book, he chronicles his life as a young man growing up to become a neurosurgeon. And when I began to read this book, I began to see the profound interest in someone just trying to be who they are, to rise above their circumstances, and to become the success story that they ultimately want to be. And I think that we all at some point have this. So in the book, I chronicle his journey into becoming a neurosurgeon. And in this particular segment of the book, he has a title called Breaking Barriers. And this is what we all seek to do every single day, right? We all want to make a name for ourselves, or get a reputation of being the person that wants to achieve. And in his case, breaking the barrier to become a neurosurgeon is something that Tony Robbins kind of lay out in one of his programs, where he says that you have to have a great enemy, not necessarily an enemy, a great opponent, for you to prove your self-worth in life, and so that you can get the challenge that you need to become the success person that you want to be. And in Breaking Barriers, he says that he goes to this chief officer at the university, and they have a conversation. And in the conversation, the chief officer says to him, "Do you think you can do this, or do you want you to do this, or do you even feel that you're capable of doing this?" And Dr. Black was taken aback by that. He wasn't a doctor this time, but I'm just trying to relate it in terms of what he is now. But at that time, he was taken aback by that because he didn't understand the reasoning for that. Because he was doing well, he was recommended to go there, yet he had this stumbling block. And what he did with this stumbling block was, Dr. Black began to think back when he grew up in Auburn, Alabama, with his mother and father. And his mother and father, they had these challenging situations that they wanted their kids to be exposed to a high level of thinking. But in Alabama at the time when he was growing up, there wasn't a place for him at that young age to do that. But his father and his mother was educators, and they were determined to try to break down the barriers to having their sons to get the best education. And at the time, he didn't really understand what was going on, but he knew that it needed to be done. Now, I want to challenge you to say, if you have a worthy opponent and you have no one to speak up for you, then how do you rise to the challenge when you're there by yourself? And the reason I'm kind of bringing this up this way is because when he was young, he had to learn a lesson from his father and his mother about standing up for your own self and standing up for your principles if you seek to achieve something. Because just like you or I, there's going to come a point where you won't have the professors in your life. You're going to get to the point where you won't have your mother and father around. You're going to get to the point where your brother or your sister or someone that you may care may not even be there. You might be in an office, or you might be giving a speech, and you might be right there alone. What do you draw from? What information do you have stored in your memory to help you overcome this great opponent and for you to break down this barrier? Well, his father was telling them that in order for you to change the environment, you have to be the first person to do something. And at the time, his father in Alabama was fighting for the students to have A1 class books, not the hand-me-down books, in terms of what the people in the African American community were getting at the time. It just turned out to be one of those things where when he was young, he didn't understand the principle, but his father was standing up so that they could have the top line education, and to make sure that the students in that environment understood what an education actually meant. when you begin to educate yourself in life, you have to make sure that that education can then feed the people that are behind you, or someone that's on the side of you. Someone that when you pass it down, they can understand the overriding principles in life is that you have to stand up for yourself, and you're going to have to break that barrier of fear. After his father had told them what to do, and the thing was they wanted to go and integrate a swimming pool. And his father gave them the money and said, you're not going to just go down there and just jump in these people's pool. You're going to pay. And when you pay, you just go swimming. And then once you do that, then it'll be over. So he gave his sons the money. And Mr. Black, they walked down there. They got to the gate, and they were stopped by a police officer or someone that was over the environment. And they said that you can't come in here. And they was like, but why we can't come in here? And they already knew because their father prepared them for this. So my thing is, are you prepared for what's about to happen in your life? Be it the most difficult thing in the world, the most challenging thing in the world? Or will you succumb to the fact that you feel that you shouldn't do something? America is a land of great opportunities, but in order to get those opportunities, you have to break barriers down because nobody's going to give you anything. There's a young man I know named Antonio Smith. He teaches on the same thing. Tony Robbins, Gary Vee. There are people that out here that's telling you that in order for you to be successful, you got to break down a few barriers because they're not going to be just open for you to have, right? And I understand that every day, but when I was reading about Dr. Black, it became very interesting at that time because I didn't even know that there was an African-American surgeon in the brain in all of my life until I got this book, right? Just show you, even though I read a lot, there's not still a lot of things that I still got to learn. But anyway, back to the story. He gave them the money, and when they got an opening, they just ran. They put their clothes on. They took their clothes off. They jumped in the pool, swam, got out. They thought they was going to be arrested by the police, and they wasn't, and then they went back home. And he went back home a changed young man because he did something that his father told him principally was right. Now back to the chief surgeon that was sitting in front of him. Now he could have been arrogant, or he could have tried to force the issue in terms of him being there. He just sat back quietly. And it gets to a point in the story where the chief surgeon asked people's questions, right? And he said there was some kind of marking on somebody's face in terms of getting ready to have surgery. And Dr. Black knew what it was. And Dr. Black said, no, that's not it. This is this. And the chief surgeon said, you're not correct. Don't even worry about it. Dr. Black stood for a second. He didn't want to be confrontational in front of the rest of the residencies as well as the surgeon, so he just sat back and took that and stored that in his memory. But what happened next is like truly remarkable because he knew his outcome. He knew he wanted to be a neurosurgeon, and there was nothing that this guy could do to stop him. So what he did was, rather than be subjective and take it personally, he went and he studied all the cases that he knew that would come up in the conference or the orientation or the class that he was in, and he wanted to make sure he have proof. The thing about science is you can't come to a scientist with something subjective. And if you're dealing with the brain and if you're dealing with trying to save somebody's life, you can't come with your feelings because your feeling does not matter when you have a scalpel and you're inside of somebody's brain and you're trying to save their life, right? He went and studied all these cases and he had to make a presentation. And as he was getting to make his presentation, when he brought up the first fact, the chief surgeon said that's not true. He said, actually it is. And then he gave him the proof of what he had studied. Not only did he give him the proof, he gave it to the chief operating officer, and then he gave it to every resident that was in there, and then he proceeded with his case. He came up with another point, and the surgeon said, no, that's not true. He said, actually it is. He gave them the paper once again and gave everybody the proof. Came up with a third point, gave everybody the proof. And he did that simply because in order to be the best, you have to know what you're talking about. In order for you to succeed at anything, you got to come with the facts, especially in science and medicine and when you're trying to take care of someone. He made the guy feel so small that chief surgeon didn't say anything else in the meeting. Now, he didn't do that to show him up. He didn't do that to embarrass him. He only did that because he knew he had to prove himself in order to be the surgeon that he would later on become. My question, ladies and gentlemen, is, are you prepared for that? Am I prepared for that? And is the world prepared enough to see you get out and succeed at what you want to do? And even if they're not, do you have the resources mentally, spiritually, and physically backing you up so that when you go out there, you got the proof of what it is you want to do? And there's nothing that can alter this outcome that you have. Now, fast forward. He's a surgeon now. Not only is he a surgeon, he's the best surgeon at Cedars-Sinai. He is the best in the world. And people from all ethnicities, people from all backgrounds come to him because they know that he was the best at what he does and what he did, and maybe still do, excuse me. And this particular story where when you go to Cedars-Sinai, they don't really take you without insurance. And when he was recalling the story of a couple people, he had one pitfall, and then he had to learn from the pitfall. And this one pitfall was, there was a young lady who needed to have an operation to have a tumor removed. And because she didn't have insurance or enough to cover it, he really couldn't do it. But what he did was, he said, I know someone that's in the public hospital. The guy's great at what he does. I'll recommend you to go to him, and he'll be able to give you the same care that I would. He sent her there. She went there. She had the surgery, and later on she died. And when he called the guy that was supposed to perform the surgery, that guy wasn't there. Someone else performed the surgery. They miscalculated, and she passed away from it. And that impacted him dearly. I mean, when you read the book, you can see that this is what he's thinking about the whole time. How did I make that slip up? But every hospital have rules and regulations. So the next time, another young lady comes to him with the same thing. And he was thinking about, should I send her away because she didn't have the money for it? But the hospital said, if you can raise a certain amount of money, then we can underwrite the rest, however it goes. And he said to them that regardless of what happens, you have to feel good about your conscience when you do things. He had talked to the young lady, talked to her family. The surgery went well, and she was cured with the cancer being removed. And there was another one. This young man come from Ethiopia, didn't have the resources as well. He comes there with just the clothes on his back along with his uncle, nothing at all. When you think about saving someone and you're thinking about helping someone and they come to you, they may come to you empty-handed. But because you have the power and they really believe in you, what do? Do you turn around? Do you say, well, I can't do that? This young man came to him with open arms because the tumor in his brain could cause him to die at any moment. And Dr. Black said, we can do the surgery, but they had nowhere for him to stay. They had no clothes at this time. But his nurse assistant knew somebody from Ethiopia, I think, and they took them in and gave them shelter. But not only that, when the young man had the surgery and it became a successful, Denzel Washington, because he was friends with them, they invited the young man over, gave him toys and clothes, and sent him on their way. Because they knew that Dr. Black was a man of spiritual quality, that he cared for the human being, and he wanted them to be free. And that's the overall message that he tries to teach is, you can make all the money in the world. And I think Antonio talks about this, like, make all the money in the world, but it does no good if you can't help anyone. Your gift in life is, if you become successful, you're ordained by universal principle to help someone. So Dr. Black was the same way. And as I'm reading the book, I'm just getting emotional because this man doesn't even have to do this. He's in a position where if you don't have the money and you don't have the time, then I don't have to deal with you. But he realized that everybody doesn't have those resources. But you got to have the heart to be willing to give the resources to help someone else. And that's something I think that we all as human beings have to think about every day, even in this difficult time that we live in. Life is not easy. It was never ordained to be easy. But there's a lot of people in this world that give a lot of principles where they've done the hard work, they've done the labor to show you that perseverance. And even if you have a worthy opponent, and that worthy opponent is trying to hinder you from your goal, well, you have to figure out how I'm going to get past this person to do what I need to do. And Dr. Black, as he was going through this, there was another young man that was a very successful entrepreneur, and he removed part of the tumor from his brain, and he had to come back to have several more surgeries to have it totally clear. And he came back, and this time when he came back, he had gotten a divorce from his wife, and that really disturbed the person. And Dr. Black automatically saw that. He asked him how he was doing, but the answer that he gave was artificial by the smile that he made. But then Dr. Black did something that we don't do most of the time. He confronted him. He said, look, you can't carry this feeling with you. You got a divorce, I understand, but your stress level will impact your getting well. And you need to try to get a handle on this, or else it might deteriorate. And he was trying to tell him that because once you begin to feel that things don't go in your favor and life may hit you with this burden, in order for you to keep yourself healthy, happy, whole, and sane, if something has been, if there's been a major change in your life, you got to be able to confront that change. And the guy said, I'm sorry about that. Things are different, and I'm going to try to deal with that. And then he asked Dr. Black, well, can I go? He wanted to go to Hong Kong. He said, you can't leave the United States. He said, well, can I go to Vegas? He said, yeah, you can go to Vegas. That's not that far, but we got to keep an eye on you until we finish this surgery. And the guy was like, okay, whatever you say goes. When you're an expert at something, and people know that you're an expert at something, and they've seen the result that you give, when you tell them something up front that's truthful, it's up to them to deal with it. You can't put your feelings in it, even though Dr. Black was feeling a certain way about it, but he knew that the healing process had to be done this way. Ladies and gentlemen, we are all here to figure our lives out. And we all need someone to show us the direction. They don't have to hold our hands all the way, but they have to be able to give you a good direction. And in reading this book, Brain Surgeon, by Dr. Keith Black, MD, shows me that the principle of the universe are the same. That you can be gifted and you can have all the skill that you want. There's a door that you have to go through in order for you to flourish. And this guy that was his worthy opponent was the one that was hindering him from getting there. But what did he do? He went back and he researched. He got what he needed, presented what he needed based on facts in the medical field. And that same surgeon that tried to hold him back ended up later on having strokes, ended up later on not doing well because he was harboring resentment in his heart towards people that he was serving or things that he was doing. But Mr. Black went on to become the top surgeon in the world. And they asked him a question in the book. They said, do you ever get nervous when you go and do surgery? He said, absolutely not. He said, I can't afford that. He said, if I go in there nervous, that means the rest of the team's going to be nervous, and that person's life that I have in my hand could end up being detrimental to me being nervous. He said that when I go into the land of the tiger, which is dealing with the brain, and I make a mistake and that tiger rears his head, it has the potential to kill the person that I'm trying to save, so I can't be nervous. And then he took it a step further. He said, not only can I not be nervous, the rest of the staff in there cannot be nervous. And he said that's why he doesn't play music. Because when he goes in there, he has to focus on the most delicate thing in the world, and that's the human brain. So ladies and gentlemen, in the part of the day, I just want to give you a resounding message. Understand that your brain power is your staying power. And if you have the gift that you choose to give to the world, make sure you have a standing confidence that when people ask you, do you get nervous? You need to be able to say emphatically, absolutely not. I can't afford to do that when I'm trying to save lives. I can't afford to do that when I'm trying to save my own life. So when I meet people, I greet them with confidence. I let them know who I am and what I'm doing and where I'm going. If we can just grab a little bit of that power that Dr. Black is displaying in this book, ladies and gentlemen, and if we can listen to the people that are around that is just trying to give us, shed light on certain things, and you grab what you need and discard the rest, right? You can't read Think and Grow Rich and grab everything in the book, but there's something that's going to resonate with you. You can't read Brain Surgeon and not find some nuggets in there for yourself that's universal in life. And you can't read So Happy and Grateful by Antonio T. Smith and not grab at least one thing that he tries to teach. You can't read a book by Gary Vee and at least grab one nugget. And that's all it is. It's one nugget that takes you to the next day. And all we're trying to do is get to the next day. You want to be happy, successful, and you want to be rich. But you got to get to the steps of learning, and you got to get to the next day. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll come with part 3 tomorrow to conclude it. But I just really want you to understand that you're going to have adversaries. But you have to have an arsenal of information and facts in front of you, and you have to be driven to accomplish your dream so that when you get there, you can explain to someone what the process is like. They got to be able to see the process, man. When they see that you're successful, they got to see that there's a process to that. If you inherit it, then it's beautiful. But then what are you going to do for the rest of the world once you get it? The main thing is you have to add value to the world. Ladies and gentlemen, until next time, continue to pursue that in which you want to pursue. Stay true to you. Grab the information that people are giving you, add it to your resident memory, and use it, or you'll lose it, and you'll have to start over again. Until next time, peace and love, my friend. Have a great day.